The rain hammered against my garage window like angry fists, matching the rhythm of my heartbeat as I watched my wife through the kitchen window. Sarah was on the phone again, twirling her hair like some teenage girl, laughing at something that made her throw her head back in that way she used to laugh at my jokes. But I knew damn well it wasn't me on the other end of that call. My name's Jake Morrison, and I've been fixing cars for 23 years. Started with my dad's old Chevy in our driveway when I was 15, worked my way up to owning Morrison's Auto Repair on 5th Street. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. Grease under the fingernails, oil stains on my shirts, and the satisfaction of bringing something broken back to life. Sarah used to say she loved that about me, how I could fix anything with these hands. These days, she acted like my hands were just dirty. I wiped the wrench clean and set it down, watching her through the window. She'd been on that call for 47 minutes. I knew because I'd been counting, the way you count the seconds between lightning and thunder, waiting for the storm to hit. Dad, you're staring again. My 16-year-old daughter Emma appeared beside me, holding her phone like it was surgically attached to her palm. It's creepy. Just thinking, kiddo. About Mom and Chris? She said it so casually, like everyone knew. Maybe everyone did. Chris Patterson, Sarah's coworker at Meridian Insurance, where she'd climbed from claims adjuster to senior account manager in 8 years. Smooth talking, gym obsessed, drives a silver BMW that probably costs more than I make in 6 months. Married to a nurse named Linda, 2 kids, lives in one of those cookie-cutter developments where all the houses look the same. What do you know about Chris? I asked Emma, trying to keep my voice level. She shrugged, that universal teenage gesture that could mean anything from nothing to everything you fear is true. Just that Mom talks about him a lot, and he's coming to her birthday party whether you like it or not. The words hit me like a wrench to the gut. She said that? Pretty much. She was talking to Aunt Kelly yesterday, said you were being unreasonably jealous about her work friends. Emma made air quotes, her voice taking on that mocking tone teenagers perfect by age 14. Honestly, Dad, maybe you should try being less, I don't know, boring? Boring. There it was. The word that had been floating around our house like a bad smell for months. Sarah never said it directly to my face, but I heard it in the way she sighed when I came home covered in motor oil, saw it in how she'd scroll through her phone instead of watching our usual Friday night movies. Thanks for the advice, Em. Real helpful. She rolled her eyes and wandered back into the house, leaving me alone with the rain and my thoughts. Through the window, I could see Sarah had moved to the living room, still on that damn phone. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her for Christmas, the one she claimed she never had anywhere special to wear. Apparently, a phone call with Chris qualified as special. I walked back to the workbench and picked up Mrs. Henderson's carburetor. Simple problem, just needed cleaning and a new gasket. If only marriages came with repair manuals. If only you could diagnose what was broken and order the right parts to fix it. My phone buzzed. Text from my best friend Danny. Beer at Murphy's? You look like you need it. Danny Kowalski ran Murphy's Tavern 3 blocks from my shop. Ex-cop turned bartender, built like a linebacker going soft around the middle with the kind of street smarts that came from 20 years of dealing with the worst humanity had to offer. He'd been watching my marriage crumble with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen it all before. I texted back, Can't. Sarah's on another marathon call with Prince Charming. Come anyway, bring your tools. Might need to fix something that ain't a car. Danny had a way of making everything sound like a threat and a joke at the same time. I looked back at the house. Sarah was still talking, still laughing, still acting like a woman who'd forgotten she was married. Screw it. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Murphy's Tavern was the kind of place where the beer was cold, the lighting was dim, and nobody asked too many questions. Danny was behind the bar, polishing glasses with the methodical precision of a man who'd learned that keeping busy was better than thinking too hard about life's disappointments. She's still on the phone? He asked without looking up. 47 minutes when I left. Probably hit an hour by now. Danny poured me a beer without being asked. You know what you gotta do, right? Enlighten me. Stop being a doormat. He set the beer in front of me with enough force to make it slosh. Your wife's having an emotional affair at minimum, probably more. She's disrespecting you in your own house, in front of your kid, and you're out here fixing carburetors like nothing's wrong? What am I supposed to do? Follow her around like some jealous psycho? No. You're supposed to act like a man who knows his worth. Danny leaned across the bar, lowering his voice. You want my professional opinion? She's testing you, seeing how much she can get away with. Every time you say nothing, you're telling her she can push a little further. I took a long drink, tasting the bitterness. Emma thinks I'm boring. Emma's 16. She thinks everything's boring except TikTok and whatever boy band is popular this week. Danny straightened up, his expression serious. But your wife? She's supposed to be on your team. When's the last time she acted like it? I tried to remember. Really tried. When was the last time Sarah had looked at me the way she looked at her phone when Chris called? When had she last laughed at my jokes, asked about my day, showed any interest in the man she'd married 18 years ago? I can't remember, I admitted. Then maybe it's time to remind her what she's got to lose. I was about to ask what he meant when my phone rang. Sarah. Where are you? Her voice was sharp, annoyed. Murphy's. Having a beer. Well, come home. We need to talk about my birthday party. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger exactly, but something colder, more calculated. Let me guess, Danny said. Princess wants to discuss party planning? Something like that. I finished my beer and stood up. Thanks for the advice. Jake, Danny called as I reached the door. Whatever you decide to do, make sure it's something you can live with. But more importantly, make sure it's something she can't. The drive home took 5 minutes, but I spent every second thinking about Danny's words. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets shiny and black under the streetlights. Our house looked normal from the outside. White picket fence, well-maintained lawn, the American dream in suburban packaging. But I knew better now. I knew what was rotting underneath the pretty surface. Sarah was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, wearing that expression she'd perfected over the years. Part disappointment, part superiority, all condescension. We need to set some ground rules for Saturday, she said without preamble. Your birthday party. Yes, my birthday party. I'm inviting 12 people from work, including Chris. I don't want any of your passive-aggressive nonsense ruining my night. I sat down across from her, studying her face. When had she gotten so hard around the edges? When had her smiles become weapons instead of gifts? I asked you not to invite him, and I told you it's my party, my choice. She uncrossed her arms, leaning forward. Jake, I'm going to say this once, and I want you to really hear me. Chris is my friend. We work together. We have things in common. If you can't handle that like a mature adult, maybe you should think about why. Things in common. I repeated the words slowly. Like what? Like ambition. Like wanting more out of life than just this. She gestured around our living room, dismissing 18 years of marriage with a wave of her hand. This. You mean our home, our life, our family? Sarah's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Our life? Jake, when was the last time we went anywhere together? Did anything exciting? When was the last time you surprised me with something other than motor oil on your shirt? I felt that cold thing inside me grow a little larger. When was the last time you acted like you wanted to be surprised? That's not the point. No, Sarah, that's exactly the point. I stood up, and for just a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Uncertainty, maybe. The point is, you've already decided I'm not enough. You've already decided Chris is better. You just haven't figured out how to make the transition without looking like the bad guy. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Then prove it. Don't invite him. We stared at each other across the coffee table that I'd built with my own hands 3 years ago. She'd loved it then, bragged about her handy husband to her friends. Now she probably saw it as just another piece of evidence that she'd married beneath her potential. I'm inviting him whether you like it or not, she said finally. It's my birthday. My choice. I nodded slowly. Okay. Okay? Okay. It's your choice. I headed toward the stairs, then paused. Just remember, Sarah, choices have consequences, and sometimes those consequences aren't what we expect. I left her sitting there and went upstairs to our bedroom, but I didn't go to sleep. Instead, I sat by the window and made 2 phone calls. The first was to Tom Bradley, the divorce attorney who'd handled Danny's split 5 years ago. The second was to Linda Patterson, Chris's wife. I'd met her once at a company barbecue, back when Sarah still invited me to work functions. Quiet woman, kind eyes, the sort of person who deserved better than what her husband was probably giving her. Both conversations were brief. Both were productive. By the time Sarah came to bed an hour later, I was pretending to sleep. She slipped under the covers without touching me, and I listened to her breathing until it evened out into the rhythm of sleep. Tomorrow was Thursday. Her party was Saturday night. That gave me exactly 2 days to set up the most important repair job of my life, fixing a marriage by breaking it completely. Friday morning came with the kind of crisp autumn air that made you remember why you loved this town, despite everything trying to tear it apart. I was at the shop by 6:30, an hour before my first appointment, using the quiet time to think and plan. Tom Bradley had been refreshingly direct during our call. If you want a clean divorce with favorable terms, you need evidence of infidelity. Photos, witnesses, documentation. The more ironclad, the better your position. Linda Patterson had been even more helpful once she got over the shock of my call. Turned out she'd been suspicious of Chris for months. Late nights at work, mysterious text messages, sudden interest in his appearance. She was a nurse at Mercy General, worked the night shift twice a week, smart woman, observant, and apparently tired of being taken for a fool. "If he's cheating with your wife," she'd said, her voice steady despite what must have been devastating confirmation of her fears, "then we both deserve to know the truth." We'd agreed to meet at Murphy's at 5 o'clock to coordinate our approach. Two spouses comparing notes, preparing for battle. My first customer was Mrs. Henderson, picking up her ancient Buick. She was 73, lived alone since her husband died, and treated that car like her last connection to him. "Runs like new, Jake. You're a miracle worker." She pressed a 20 into my hand despite my protests. "You take care of yourself, honey. And tell that pretty wife of yours I said hello." Pretty wife. If she only knew that my pretty wife was probably texting her boyfriend right now, planning their next secret meeting. The morning passed in a blur of oil changes and brake jobs, honest work that kept my hands busy while my mind churned. Around noon, Emma stopped by with lunch, turkey sandwich and chips from the deli down the street. "Mom sent this," she said, but her expression suggested she wasn't buying whatever story Sarah had told her. "Thanks, kiddo. How's school?" "Boring, like everything else." She perched on my workbench, swinging her legs. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the solar plexus. I set down my sandwich, studying my daughter's face. When had she gotten so perceptive? When had she stopped being a little girl and started seeing the world with such clear, unforgiving eyes? "What makes you ask that?" "You guys don't talk anymore, not really. And Mom's been different, happier, but not about anything at home." Emma picked at a loose thread on her jeans. "Plus, she's been doing her makeup different lately, like she's trying to impress someone." Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. "Your mom and I are going through some things," I said carefully. "But whatever happens, it's not your fault, and we both love you. That won't change. But you are getting divorced." It wasn't a question. Emma had inherited her mother's intelligence and her father's ability to see through bullshit. No point in lying to her. "I don't know yet. Maybe." She nodded like she'd been expecting that answer. "Will I have to choose who to live with?" "Probably not. You're old enough that the court would listen to your preferences, but we'd try to work something out that's best for you." "Good, because I'd choose you." She said it matter-of-factly, like she was ordering pizza. "Mom's been kind of a bitch lately." "Emma." "What?" "She has. Ever since she started hanging out with that Chris guy, she acts like she's too good for us. Like we're holding her back from some amazing life she deserves." Emma hopped down from the workbench. "I hope you take her for everything she's got." My 16-year-old daughter walked out of my shop, leaving me staring after her with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. When had she grown up? When had she started seeing her mother so clearly? The afternoon dragged. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be Sarah, calling to cancel the party or confess everything, or at least acknowledge that our marriage was circling the drain. Instead, it was customers and suppliers and Danny checking to make sure I was still planning to meet Linda. At 4:30, I locked up the shop and drove to Murphy's. Linda was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a cup of coffee and the kind of hollow expression that comes from having your worst fears confirmed. She was prettier than I'd remembered from the company barbecue, auburn hair, green eyes, the kind of natural beauty that didn't need much makeup. She was also clearly devastated, trying to hold herself together through sheer force of will. "Thank you for calling," she said as I sat down across from her. "I needed to know." Danny brought me a beer without being asked, nodded politely to Linda, and retreated to give us privacy. The afternoon crowd was thin, a couple of construction workers, an old man reading a newspaper, nobody who would pay attention to two strangers having a quiet conversation. "How long have you suspected?" I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. Chris started working late, going to team-building events that never seemed to include the rest of the team. He bought new clothes, started going to the gym religiously, got a haircut that cost more than my car payment. Linda wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "But the real tell was how he started talking about your wife." "What do you mean?" "Sarah this, Sarah that, how smart she is, how ambitious, how she really gets the insurance business. He'd compare us constantly. How Sarah dresses for success while I just wear scrubs, how Sarah has career goals while I'm just a nurse." Linda's voice cracked slightly. He made me feel like I was the consolation prize he settled for. I felt a surge of anger on her behalf. You're not a consolation prize. You save lives for a living. Try telling him that. She managed a weak smile. What about you? When did you know? I told her about the phone calls, the late nights, the way Sarah had started treating our home like a pit stop between more important places. Linda listened without judgment, occasionally nodding in recognition. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, I said. She's inviting him to her birthday party tomorrow night, in our house, like she wants to rub my nose in it. Chris told me he had a work function tomorrow night, some colleague's birthday. Linda laughed bitterly. I guess that's technically true. We sat in silence for a moment, two people whose lives were about to change forever, taking comfort in shared misery. So what's the plan? Linda asked finally. I pulled out my phone and showed her the contact information Tom Bradley had given me for a private investigator. Professional documentation, photos, video, whatever we can get. But I think tomorrow night might give us everything we need. You want me to come to the party? I want you to be in the neighborhood, with a camera and maybe a witness. I glanced toward the bar where Danny was pretending not to listen to our conversation. I have a feeling they're going to give us exactly what we need. Linda was quiet for a long moment, staring into her coffee. When she looked up, her eyes had hardened into something that reminded me of surgical steel. 15 years, she said. I've been married to that man for 15 years, supported him through business school, worked double shifts to pay for his MBA, moved 3 times for his career. I gave him 2 beautiful children and the best years of my life. And I'm done being the understanding wife. If he wants to throw away our family for some midlife crisis fantasy, then he's going to pay for it. We both are. I raised my beer in a toast. To making them pay. Linda clinked her coffee cup against my bottle. To making them pay? We spent another hour planning, working out logistics and timing. Linda would park across the street from my house at 8 o'clock. Danny would be her backup, positioned where he could see both the front and back doors. I'd make sure the living room curtains were open and the lights were bright. All we needed was for Sarah and Chris to do what they'd been doing for months, act like they were the only 2 people in the world who mattered. By the time I got home, Sarah was in full party preparation mode. She'd rearranged the furniture, set out her good dishes, and transformed our living room into something that looked like a magazine spread. She was wearing a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before, her hair and makeup perfect. She looked beautiful. She also looked like a stranger. You're late, she said, without looking up from the cheese platter she was arranging. Had to finish up a repair job? I watched her work, noting the way she kept checking her phone, the nervous energy radiating from her like heat from an engine. Need any help? I've got it handled. She finally looked at me, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Guilt. Just a flicker, quickly hidden, but it was there. Jake, about tomorrow night? Yeah? Try to be all pleasant. These are my colleagues, my friends. I don't want any drama. Drama. Like I was the one who'd been conducting a months-long emotional affair, like I was the one planning to humiliate my spouse in our own home. Don't worry, I said. I'll be on my best behavior. She nodded, apparently satisfied, and went back to her preparations. I headed upstairs to shower and change, leaving her to create the perfect setting for her own downfall. In our bedroom, I found the new dress tags in the wastebasket. $240 at Nordstrom. When was the last time Sarah had spent that kind of money on something to wear around me? I showered and put on my best shirt and slacks, the outfit I wore to weddings and funerals and other occasions that required looking respectable. In the mirror, I looked like exactly what I was, a 40-year-old mechanic trying to clean up nice. No wonder Sarah preferred Chris's gym-sculpted physique and designer wardrobe. But tomorrow night, looking ordinary might be exactly what I needed. Let her and Chris think I was just the boring husband, too oblivious to see what was happening right under my nose. Let them get comfortable, careless, confident. Let them give me everything I needed to destroy them both. I went to bed early, leaving Sarah to finish her preparations downstairs. As I drifted off to sleep, I could hear her on the phone, her voice bright with anticipation. I can't wait for you to see the house, she was saying. It's going to be perfect. She was right about that. It was going to be perfect, just not in the way she expected. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Tomorrow night, Sarah would get exactly what she'd been asking for, and so would I. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that made everything look sharp and clear, like the world had been washed clean overnight. I spent the morning at the shop doing paperwork and puttering around with small repairs, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind off what was coming. Linda had texted me at 9. Ready for tonight. Chris left early for the gym. Says he wants to look good for the party. Danny had called an hour later. Got my camera charged and my story straight. This is going to be better than cable TV. By noon, I couldn't concentrate on work anymore. I locked up the shop and drove home to find Sarah in full preparation mode. She'd been to the hair salon, the nail salon, and apparently half the stores in the mall. Shopping bags covered our bed, and she was standing in front of the mirror in our bedroom, holding up 2 different pairs of earrings. "Which ones?" she asked when she saw me in the doorway. The diamond studs I'd given her for our 10th anniversary, or the dangly silver ones I'd never seen before. The symbolism was almost too perfect. "The diamonds," I said. "They bring out your eyes." She smiled. The first genuine smile she'd given me in weeks. For just a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, the one who used to laugh at my jokes and steal my hoodies on cold mornings. You always know exactly what to say. She put on the earrings, studying herself in the mirror. "How do I look?" Like a woman getting ready for a date with someone else's husband, like a wife who'd forgotten she had a husband of her own. "Beautiful," I said, and meant it. "You always look beautiful." Something flickered across her face. Regret, maybe, or second thoughts. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "I should finish getting ready. People will start arriving at 7. I nodded and went downstairs to help set up, playing the role of the supportive husband one last time. We arranged chairs and set out appetizers and tested the sound system, working together like we used to when we were a team instead of 2 people sharing a house. Emma emerged from her room at 6:30, dressed in black jeans and a Nirvana t-shirt that was probably older than she was. "You look nice, kiddo," I said. "Thanks. I'm going to Melissa's house for the night. Her mom's making pizza and we're having a Marvel marathon." She grabbed her overnight bag and headed for the door, then paused. "Dad?" "Yeah? Whatever happens tonight, just remember that some of us are on your team." She was gone before I could respond, leaving me staring at the door and wondering when my daughter had gotten so wise. The first guests arrived at 7 sharp. Sarah's boss Janet and her husband, followed by 3 other couples from the office. I played host, taking coats and offering drinks, making small talk about the weather and the local football team's chances this season. Chris arrived at 7:20. He looked exactly like what he was, a man in his mid-30s who spent serious money on his appearance. Perfectly styled hair, expensive cologne, a shirt that probably cost more than most people's car payments. He brought Sarah a bouquet of white roses and a bottle of champagne that I recognized as the good stuff. "Jake?" He extended his hand with the kind of aggressive friendliness that was meant to establish dominance. "Great to see you, buddy. Thanks for having me." Buddy, like we were old friends instead of 2 men fighting over the same woman. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, shaking his hand and noting the way his eyes immediately searched the room for Sarah. "Make yourself at home." He found her in the kitchen, arranging appetizers on a platter. I watched from the doorway as he presented the flowers with a flourish that belonged in a romantic comedy. "Chris, they're gorgeous." Sarah's face lit up like he'd just given her the crown jewels. "You didn't have to. Nothing's too good for the birthday girl." He leaned in to kiss her cheek, and I saw the way she tilted her head toward him, the way her hand lingered on his arm. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. The party moved to the living room, where Sarah held court like a queen surrounded by her subjects. She was radiant, animated, telling stories and laughing at jokes and playing the perfect hostess. And through it all, Chris stayed close, refilling her wineglass and finishing her sentences, and generally acting like a man who belonged there. I circulated among the guests, playing my part, but I was really watching the clock. At 8:15, I stepped onto the front porch for some air and saw Linda's car parked across the street. She flashed her headlights once, our agreed signal that she was in position. Danny's truck was parked 2 houses down, positioned where he could see anyone who might try to leave through the back door. Everything was set. Back inside, the party was hitting its stride. Someone had turned up the music, and Janet was telling an embarrassing story about a client who'd tried to file a claim for damage caused by aggressive squirrels. Everyone was laughing, wine was flowing, and the atmosphere was loose and comfortable. Perfect conditions for people to make mistakes. I refilled my own drink and positioned myself where I could watch Sarah and Chris without being obvious about it. They were sitting on the couch, closer than necessary, her hand resting on his knee while they shared some private joke. They make a cute couple, don't they? I turned to find Margaret Henley, one of Sarah's work friends, standing beside me with a knowing smile. Margaret was the office gossip, the kind of woman who collected secrets like baseball cards. "Excuse me?" "Oh, come on, Jake. Everyone knows about Sarah and Chris. The way they look at each other, all those late nights working on projects together." Margaret took a sip of her wine, watching my face for a reaction. "I just think it's so modern of you to be okay with it." "Modern? like adultery was some new lifestyle choice instead of the oldest betrayal in the book. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said carefully. Margaret's smile widened. "Of course not. Well, I think it's wonderful that you're all so evolved. Not many husbands would be comfortable with their wives having such close male friends." She drifted away, leaving me standing there with the confirmation I'd needed. It wasn't just Sarah and Chris. Everyone knew. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how the boring husband would handle his wife's very public, emotional affair. I looked around the room with new eyes, noting the subtle glances and whispered conversations. How long had I been the subject of office gossip? How long had they all been watching my marriage disintegrate like it was entertainment? At 9:30, Sarah announced it was time for cake. Everyone gathered in the dining room while she made a wish and blew out the candles. Chris stood directly behind her, his hands on her shoulders, and when she finished, he was the first to applaud. "Speech," someone called out. "Birthday girl has to make a speech." Sarah laughed and held up her wine glass. Okay. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. You're not just my colleagues, you're my friends, my chosen family. You make every day at work a joy, and you make me feel like I can accomplish anything." Her eyes found Chris in the crowd, and she smiled. "Some of you have become especially important to me this year. You've reminded me that life is full of possibilities, that it's never too late to chase your dreams or become the person you're meant to be." The room erupted in applause and cheers. I clapped along, playing my part, but inside I was calculating. She just declared her feelings for Chris in front of a room full of witnesses, including her own husband. The arrogance was breathtaking. After cake, the party began to wind down. Couples started making their excuses, thanking Sarah for a lovely evening and heading home to their normal, non-dramatic lives. By 10:15, only 6 people remained: Sarah, Chris, Margaret, Janet, and her husband, and me. That's when Chris made his move. "Sarah, could I talk to you privately for a minute? I have something I wanted to give you." Sarah's cheeks flushed pink. "Of course. We can go out on the back patio." They disappeared through the sliding glass door, leaving me with the remaining guests and a perfect view through the patio windows. I kept up my conversation with Janet's husband about his golf game while watching Sarah and Chris in my peripheral vision. Chris pulled out a small wrapped box, jewelry from the size and shape. Sarah opened it and gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Even from a distance, I could see it was a necklace, something delicate and expensive. He moved behind her to fasten it around her neck, his hands gentle on her skin. She turned to face him, and they stood there for a moment, close enough to share breath, looking into each other's eyes like they were the only 2 people in the world. Then Chris leaned down and kissed her. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, not an accidental brush of lips. A real kiss, soft and lingering and full of promise. Sarah didn't pull away. Instead, she melted into him, her arms going around his neck, kissing him back like she meant it. The remaining guests had gone quiet, everyone staring through the window at the scene unfolding on my back patio. Margaret had her phone out, probably recording the whole thing for posterity. I set down my drink and walked to the sliding door, my movements calm and deliberate. Behind me, I heard Janet whisper, "Oh my God, is he going to—" I opened the door and stepped onto the patio. Sarah and Chris sprang apart like teenagers caught by a parent, but the damage was done. Sarah's lipstick was smudged, Chris's hair was messed up, and they both had the guilty, panicked look of people who knew they'd been caught. "Having a nice conversation?" I asked conversationally. Sarah's face went through several shades of red before settling on a pale, sick green. "Jake, I can explain." "No need." I pulled out my phone and held it up, showing them the photo I'd just taken through the window. "I think the picture explains everything." Chris stepped forward, puffing out his chest like a rooster. "Look, Jake, this isn't what— Actually, it's exactly what it looks like." I turned to address the audience gathered at the window. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present my wife and her boyfriend, providing the evening's entertainment." Sarah found her voice. "You're being ridiculous. It was just what? Just a kiss? Just an affair? Just the complete destruction of our marriage?" I smiled, and apparently it wasn't a nice smile, because Chris actually took a step back. "Just the final piece of evidence my lawyer needs for our divorce proceedings?" The word divorce hit Sarah like a physical blow. "Your lawyer?" "Tom Bradley. Great guy, very thorough. He's particularly good at asset division in cases involving adultery." I looked at Chris, who had gone very pale. "How about you, Chris? Does Linda know you're here tonight?" "Linda?" Sarah looked confused. "Who's Linda?" "His wife," I said helpfully. "Lovely woman. Nurse at Mercy General. Mother of his 2 children. You know, the family he's destroying for a quick thrill with a married coworker. Chris was backing toward the patio door now, clearly ready to bolt. I should go? Oh, don't leave on my account. In fact, why don't we call Linda and invite her over? I'm sure she'd love to meet the woman her husband's been cheating with. That's when the doorbell rang. I smiled. Or maybe we don't need to call her. I walked through the living room to the front door, aware that every eye in the house was following me. The remaining guests were frozen in place, like they were watching a car accident happen in slow motion. I opened the front door to reveal Linda Patterson, looking elegant in a navy dress and pearls, carrying a manila envelope and wearing the kind of smile that could cut glass. Hello, Jake. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all. In fact, your timing is perfect. I stepped aside to let her in. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Linda Patterson. Linda, this is my wife Sarah's birthday party. Sarah's the one in the black dress on the patio, currently wearing the necklace your husband just gave her. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Linda walked through the living room like she owned it, nodding politely to the stunned guests. She stopped at the sliding door and looked out at Sarah and Chris, who were still frozen on the patio like deer in headlights. Hello, darling, she called to Chris through the glass. Surprise? Chris looked like he was going to be sick. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the patio stones. Linda turned to face the room, still wearing that razor-sharp smile. I brought some photos I thought everyone might enjoy. Professional quality, taken over the past 3 weeks. She opened the envelope and spread a dozen 8x10 photographs across the coffee table. Images of Chris and Sarah holding hands in restaurant booths, kissing in parking lots, entering and leaving a hotel together. Margaret leaned over to get a better look. Oh my, she whispered. The private investigator was very thorough, Linda continued conversationally. Dates, times, locations, even credit card receipts. Chris has been quite generous with his expense account, haven't you, sweetheart? Through the window, I could see Chris frantically gesturing, probably trying to explain to Sarah how they were going to handle this disaster. Sarah was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. I think, I said to the room at large, this party is over. Janet and her husband were already reaching for their coats. Margaret was still staring at the photographs like they were the most fascinating thing she'd ever seen. The other guests were edging toward the door with the universal urgency of people who wanted to be anywhere but here. Within 5 minutes, the house was empty, except for me, Linda, and the 2 cheaters still standing on my back patio like they were afraid to come inside. Linda gathered up her photographs and tucked them back into the envelope. I'll be filing for divorce on Monday, she announced to Chris through the window. My lawyer suggests you find somewhere else to stay tonight, and for the foreseeable future. She turned to me and extended her hand. Thank you for your help with this, Jake. I couldn't have asked for a better outcome. I shook her hand, marveling at her composure. Thank you for being here. I couldn't have done this alone. Oh, you're not alone. You have friends who care about you. Speaking of which, she glanced toward the kitchen. I believe Danny's been waiting in your backyard for the last hour, just in case anyone tried to make a run for it. Sure enough, Danny appeared at the back gate, giving me a thumbs up through the window. Linda gathered her purse and headed for the front door. I'll be in touch about coordinating our legal proceedings. I have a feeling our lawyers are going to work very well together. After she left, I finally opened the sliding door and let Sarah and Chris back into the house. They stood in my living room like criminals awaiting sentencing, which I supposed they were. Jake, Sarah began, her voice shaky. We need to talk about this rationally. No, we don't. I walked to the closet and pulled out Chris's jacket. Chris, you need to leave. Now. Don't come back. He took his jacket with shaking hands. Sarah, I'll call you. No, you won't. I stepped between them. You'll go home to whatever's left of your marriage and stay away from my wife. Any communication goes through lawyers from now on. Chris looked at Sarah one last time, then practically ran for the door. Sarah and I stood alone in our living room, surrounded by the debris of her birthday party and our marriage. Empty wine glasses, crumpled napkins, and the lingering scent of her expensive perfume mixed with the smell of betrayal. 18 years, I said quietly. 18 years of marriage, and you threw it away for him. Jake, please, we can work through this. It didn't mean anything. Stop. I held up my hand. Don't insult my intelligence any more than you already have. I saw the way you looked at him. I heard your speech tonight. You're in love with him, and you have been for months. Sarah sank onto the couch. Her perfect party dress wrinkled, her makeup streaked with tears. What happens now? Now? Now you pack a bag and find somewhere else to stay while we figure out the divorce. I'll be generous with custody and support, but I want you out of this house. This is my home, too. No, Sarah, this was our home. You made it very clear tonight that you've outgrown it. Time to move on to bigger and better things, right? She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant when she realized I wasn't going to forgive her, wasn't going to fight for our marriage, wasn't going to give her the chance to have her cake and eat it too. I never meant for it to happen this way, she whispered. But you're not sorry it happened. She opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it again. We both knew the truth. An hour later, Sarah's suitcase was packed and sitting by the front door. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, washed off her makeup, taken off the necklace Chris had given her. She looked younger somehow, more like the woman I'd married, but it was too late for that now. Where will you go? I asked. My sister's, probably, at least until I figure things out. She picked up her suitcase, then set it down again. Jake, I know you hate me right now, but I want you to know. You're a good man. You deserved better than this. Yes, I did. She nodded and picked up her suitcase again. At the door, she paused one more time. Will you tell Emma? I'll tell Emma the truth, that her mother chose someone else over her family. She'll figure out the rest on her own. Sarah's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. She just nodded and walked out the door, leaving me alone in the house we'd shared for 15 years. I poured myself a drink and sat in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of the party. Tomorrow I'd clean up the mess, call Tom Bradley to move forward with the divorce, and start figuring out how to rebuild my life. But tonight, I just sat in the quiet house and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Saw the photos on Margaret's Instagram. Are you okay? I typed back, I'm fine, kiddo. Come home when you're ready. We'll figure everything out together. Another text, this one from Danny. Beer tomorrow? First round's on me. And finally, one from Linda. Thank you for tonight. Justice feels good, doesn't it? I looked around my empty house. Really looked at it for the first time in months. The coffee table I'd built, the bookshelves I'd installed, the framed photos of better times. It was a good house, a home worth fighting for. Sarah was right about one thing. I was a good man, and I did deserve better. Now I was going to get it.